Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Science is Everywhere. My name is Savannah Stanley. Today, we are going to be joined by one of our very own Flinn Scientific staff scientists, Dr. Alan Downward. Today, he is going to give us a tour of the southern skies of New Zealand. Dr. Alan, take it away.
Kia ora. I'm currently visiting Te Waipunamu, New Zealand's South Island, and behind me is Lake Tekapo. And if I turn slightly, you can see Mount John. And now, through the magic of editing, I'm here at the top of Mount John. And if you're wondering why I might look a little bit sweaty and sound slightly out of breath, well, the answer is I walked up. And the reason I did is because that, right there, is part of the University of Canterbury Mount John Observatory. In fact, this entire region is a dark sky reserve, which means that there are rules, regulations, and requests in place with regards to street lighting, closing your curtains at night, and not driving with your high beams on. Now, while we can try and control the amount of light in the area, unfortunately, we can't control the weather. And while I've been here, I've been treated to these beautiful, clear days with amazing alpine views, but unfortunately at night, I've been watching cloud banks roll in over those very same mountains and ruin any chance of stargazing for me so far. Now, I don't want to sound all negative about this, because the last time I was here, about 18 and a half years ago, I had an amazing experience. I was a student at the University of Canterbury, and I was here on a day trip. And if you've ever heard the expression, the answer is no until you ask, that sums up that trip perfectly. As undergraduate students, we were supposed to get a daytime tour of the facilities, get to look through a telescope, and then go to bed and let the real scientists get to work. Well, I went to the team of asteroid hunters and said, would it be okay if I just sat in the corner and watched you work? Their reply was, well, you might find it a bit boring, but we're due to wrap up our work tonight at midnight. So come over at 11 p.m., watch us work for an hour, and then the telescope is yours. Point it at whatever you want. So I got to spend an evening taking pretty pictures of things in the sky. An amazing experience. And the truth is, when people who are passionate about science encounter someone who shows genuine interest, they will bend over backwards to share that interest with them. This observatory sits at negative 44 degrees south, which is a very south location. And one might then start to wonder, why do we need an observatory all the way down here?
Sorry to interrupt, but at the time I recorded this, I only had one night left in Tekapo, and all indications were that it would once again be overcast. However, I still set an alarm just in case, and when it went off, I was treated to a magnificent view of the night sky. So rather than talk in generalities about southern sky objects, I want to instead show you some actual examples of what I saw and photographed that night. Something I want you to keep in mind as we look at the following pictures is that they were all taken using either my cell phone or an entry-level DSLR camera I bought at a garage sale. For this first picture, I pointed my cell phone camera north to photograph something that many people living in the northern hemisphere are already familiar with, the constellation of Orion. At first, it's actually a little hard to spot because of how many stars are in the picture. But these are the stars of his belt, and here is his sword with the Sword Nebula visible. Something that tells you this was taken in the southern hemisphere is that Orion is standing on his head. Next, I turned my cell phone south and photographed part of the Carina-Sagittarius arm of the Milky Way. Near the center of this image is the Carina Nebula, which is larger and brighter than the Sword Nebula in Orion. However, it is not as well known as it is truly a southern sky object. With a declination of around 60 degrees south, it could only be seen from the very southernmost regions of the continental United States. Switching to the DSLR camera, we get a more zoomed in and clearer picture of the nebula, as well as several other star clusters. Jumping back to the cell phone version, you can see a blob in the top right corner. That blob is the Large Magellanic Cloud, and in this more centered picture, you can also see the Small Magellanic Cloud. These are satellite galaxies of the Milky Way. At a distance of around 200,000 light-years, they are 10 times closer than the Andromeda Galaxy. These dwarf galaxies are even further south than the Carina Nebula, and unfortunately, there is no location within the continental United States from which they can be seen. This photo was taken with the DSLR and shows just the Large Magellanic Cloud. The Large Magellanic Cloud contains 20 billion stars. One type of star found within is known as a Cepheid variable. These stars pulsate rapidly, with a strong correlation between their brightness and the speed of the pulsations. By studying these stars in the Large Magellanic Cloud, astronomers were able to develop a method to estimate astronomical distances by simply observing the brightness of a Cepheid variable star and comparing it to the predicted value. And it was using this technique that Edwin Hubble proved that many of the objects previously classified as clouds of dust were in fact galaxies far beyond the Milky Way, and that the universe was much larger than many people thought. These pictures and examples help to demonstrate that science is everywhere and illustrate the need for scientific investigation and discovery all around the world. They also help to show the way that technological advancements have helped to erode the gaps between amateurs and professionals. Nowadays, anyone with a cell phone camera can go out and start their own journey into astrophotography. And if you choose to do so, I also hope that you will choose to share the results of that journey with us by showing us the photos that you take and telling us about your experiences.
Thank you, Dr. Allen, for taking us on all of your adventures and showing us all the science that you found in New Zealand. And everybody, until next time, remember to find ways that science is everywhere.